enhancements to campaign billing, which I know is a mouthful. So I know there are still a few people still getting settled in. So I'm going to give, hopefully everybody is just kind of starting to get settled in now. I want to do a little introduction about one, about this enhancement, and two, really this webinar. Not sure if it applies to everybody. So if you are not completely comfortable with campaign generation, how do you create a campaign? How do you create segments? How do you link your projects to it? What's the best way to set up my billing? Then I would suggest that this isn't the webinar for you. This is really kind of that next step where campaigns are already built. You know how that you're using them, and we're just going to be talking about the enhancements that are happening to campaigns. If you do have a lot of those questions about, general campaign creation, then I would suggest, setting up a call with your account manager. They'll be able to go through all of that information with you, as well as show you at the same time those new campaign features. So this really solely has to do with campaign billing. And if you do have some of those questions, I'm going to try to answer some, but if I start to find that they're too closely related to just, campaigns and how to set them up, then I will go ahead and suggest, please reach out to your account manager. They'll be happy to go through all of these with you. All right. Introduction. My name is Birgit Hippel. I am doing this webinar. In fact, there will be two webinars. The first one is, the enhancements to campaigns and mass billing. And then the next webinar is going to be next month on, it's again going to kind of recover what changes were happening to campaigns, and then billing worksheets. So some of my clients, only do mass billing, others will only do billing worksheets. So depending on which webinar you're in, I'm going to be covering the enhancements to campaigns, and then this one will be covering mass billing. Next one will be covering billing worksheets. If at any point you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. I'm going to try and keep the questions that I answer to just specific sections, and if I don't get to your question, always reach out to your account manager. At the end, if we have some time, be happy to answer any questions that I might have missed. If it turns out that this webinar is not for you, where you're learning general campaigns and you're still getting comfortable with that and you want to drop off of the call, I understand, not going to take it personal. So for those of you who are comfortable with campaigns and are ready to jump in, let's go ahead and start to talk about the new enhancements. So first off, the enhancements are not coming out until the next update. They were hoping to have them available in the April update. They didn't, but I kind of think that's okay because it gives me the chance to do my webinar, and those enhancements will be available in the May update. We are also in the process of updating all of the help guide articles. There are quite a few that are going to be touched because of these enhancements. So just be patient with us. We are getting to them. We've been working on them, and we're publishing those pages as soon as we have them. So in the current situation right now, when you have a campaign, and what we're really looking at is this bill by option. So let's talk about the purpose of this enhancement. The enhancement is the fact that if you're using bill by and you're using campaign, not by project, if you're using the campaign option, you get a bill button within your campaign. This is currently what happens. This bill button allows you to go into the and bill the campaign estimate that you've created. Okay, so if I go to the bill button and open this up, I have the option to bill one amount, service and item, by percentage of project. And if I have segment set up, then I also have, the option to do by segment. That part of the campaign is not changing. This button will still be there. If you're using currently billing worksheets and you have this set to bill by campaign, the system does something totally different. It doesn't bill the campaign budget. It actually says, okay, I'm going to take all of the projects that you have in your campaign. I'm going to bill them according to the billing method on the projects, but I'm going to go ahead and group them onto a master worksheet for this campaign. So therefore, I can bill all of my projects together on one invoice. So the same field is being used two different ways. In the campaign, you get the option to bill the campaign budget. In a billing worksheet, you have the option, you have the ability to bill each individual project. They're just put on a master worksheet so that it creates one invoice. This becomes more like a group by option. Okay. Having this field do two different things is what we really wanted to separate, and the new enhancements will separate this field so that you have that option to be able to bill the campaign budget both in mass billing and in billing worksheets. Okay. In addition, for those changes, we also added some other enhancements to the system. So what's going to happen when the update first goes out? When the update first goes out, whatever you have in this field will remain in that field. That's not going to be any changes. So if I come on over, this is my other site where I actually have those enhancements in. So when I come into a campaign and I look at the campaign settings, it's going to have the same options as it does now. Okay. If you want the system to work exactly as it does now, then you don't need to make any changes. You're still going to have the bill button to be able to bill using the campaign budget. If you're using billing worksheets, it's still going to bill the projects, and it's going to put it on a master worksheet and create one master. That part remains the same. What we have done now is we added an additional field that allows the system to read the campaign budget for billing worksheets and for mass billing. Now I know that my billing worksheet webinar is going to be, next month, and I'll go into the details, but it's going to work the same way as what I'm going to be showing with mass billing. So we gave this option to use a campaign budget, but we also gave the option to now have expenses are not included. The philosophy was that we really wanted to make the campaign budget be very similar to a fixed fee project. So if you come in and look at a regular fixed fee project, and I come to my project and I go to my billing options and I'm billing a fixed fee, expenses are not included. What happens in my billing schedule then is the system uses the labor budget only, because it's going to allow you to bill any additional expenses, the actual expenses. So the billing schedule now is only looking at the labor portion. Okay. If you uncheck this box within billing options and you say expenses are not included, then the fixed fee portion in the billing schedule actually use the entire budget. So, oops, let me go ahead and change that, fix that billing schedule. And now it's using the entire campaign budget. So that checkbox really is saying I'm going to make the actual expenses available to bill, and then I would only use the labor budget. If that box is unselected, then it says, well, I'm using the whole entire campaign budget, and actual expenses will not be billed. That's the same thing we did here on expenses are included or not included within the campaign. So if I select that box, now any expenses on my projects that are linked to the campaign can be billed in addition to the labor portion of the campaign budget. We also added a billing schedule. So if, oops, let me open that up. Let me go ahead and save that. If I open the billing schedule now is using just the labor portion of the budget. If I uncheck the box that I'm using, including expenses, then it's going to use the entire budget. So if you just think that the philosophy stays the same way as a fixed fee project does, the campaign is being treated like a fixed fee campaign. When you look at the billing schedule, it's very similar to a fixed fee project billing schedule, but what it does not have is by task. So you must choose a date to bill. Okay, you can still do a percentage of the budget. You can do a dollar amount. You can have your billing comments in there, and you can also set in any advance bills that you want to schedule. Okay, system works the same way with this billing schedule now. If I come over to the bill button and I have these options selected, you're going to notice now that the system is actually bringing up any actual expenses on each one of my individual projects, so I can still continue to bill from within the campaign, just like you can within a project. You can bill within a campaign and now bill the campaign budget. So this portion didn't change at all, whether you've got one amount, service and item, percentage of project, or if there is percentage of segment, if you're using segments. But it's also going to include any expenses that have hit the projects based on the through date. Okay. If you One of the other enhancements, that we've also included is if you click on the blue dots, we are now giving you the option to mark all transactions as billed on your projects. So, previously, if you did bill a campaign budget, you still had to go back to your individual projects and mark all those transactions as billed, which could be very cumbersome depending on the number of projects you had in there. So this is an option. You can turn this off if you want. I believe it is on by default, so it will mark all transactions as billed up through this through date. Okay. In the campaign settings, there is still the bill by percentage of and the one line per. These become used only for billing worksheets. And the billing schedule is not read in here. So if I do again, look, I have a billing schedule set in here that as of today, I'm billing 25% of my labor budget. If you notice when you come over to the bill button, it is not, setting any of the percentages at all. The system is really saying, you're here in the campaign, you have an option. What do you want to bill? You can bill anything that you want. If you want to, you can come in and say, well, I'd like to do by service and item. I'm going to go ahead and choose just my services. I'm going to do that 25% that I need to and bill just the fixed fee portion of the labor. Whoops, not of my expenses. I'm just going to be billing the percent of my labor, and then any extras, that's what you see here. Okay. Let me see, I do have a question up there. All right, where can we change the mark all transactions billed settings from? I would like to uncheck it for my default. Okay, so it is a single setting within the campaign. So if you've unchecked this in one campaign, it is then by default unchecked across all your campaigns. So you only set it once. It's not a transaction preference. It's the same thing that you do in a project. So in a project, when you go down to billing and you're billing fixed fee, you have your three dots here. You've got the mark all transactions as billed. If you uncheck that in one project, then it's unchecked it across all projects. It remembers that setting. So that'll be the same thing within the campaign. If you uncheck it here, it will unmark all transactions as, it won't mark all your transactions as billed. Okay. All right. So the campaign settings adheres within the campaign to the expenses are not included. It will display those. If you uncheck this, whether you're using the campaign budget or you just uncheck that and save, when you go to your bill option, it's going to read it just like it normally does. just like the way it currently does. Okay, so you have that option within the system, but by default, this is going to be turned off, so you will actually have to turn it on if that's the option that you want for your campaigns. This bill by percentage and the one line per have to do with billing worksheets only, so they will have no application inside the campaign. They will also have no application in mass billing. It is only read for billing worksheets because of the fact that you're generating all these different worksheets at one time. The system needs to know exactly how this campaign is going to be billed. The layout does work, so once you create any client invoices, whether it's in the campaign, mass billing, billing worksheets, if you set a layout on your campaign, that will automatically be set on your client invoices. Okay. Do we have any questions at all about how the campaign is going to be set up and the new changes within the campaign? And let me see, I've got a chat. Can you use the campaign estimate and billing schedule in revenue forecast rather than individual projects? Yes. In fact, that is also an enhancement that came out and will come out with the May update. You will see a new category within the revenue forecast for campaigns, active campaigns, and then potential campaigns. This has to do with if you use this use campaign budget, then you must have a billing schedule, and the campaign budget then will be automatically included in the revenue forecast. Does the billing default set at the client level carry through to each campaign? No. So a campaign is usually unique compared to what's on a project. A project, you can say, well, generally we always do this fixed fee billing method, and we always do a one line per, and we've got these different formats. Those defaults in the client record are really for project level defaults. When you create the new project and when you go to bill projects within mass billing or campaign or billing worksheets, those defaults come into play. For the campaign, you're really setting that information at the campaign because campaigns can do something very different than the projects do. Who do you find typically creates a new campaign versus set up the campaign settings? For example, does the account manager create the campaign and then someone in finance updates the campaign settings and billing settings? That's really, it's kind of the same process that you have with projects. Who's creating the project and then who sets the format of how it's going to be billed. Generally, for most that I know, the person setting up the campaign is also the one who knows exactly how it's to be billed, generally when it's to be billed. And so now they have that opportunity to set that billing schedule. Otherwise, it might be, part of that first function where the campaign is set up and then it is handed over as far as how it's going to be billed and when it's going to be billed. All right, any other questions before we move off of campaigns? Correct. This is not available yet until the May update. So we were hoping to have it available in the April update, and we had some tweaks and changes we still wanted to do. And so we held it off for an additional month and thought, that's okay. I'm not doing the webinar until the end of April anyway. So in a couple weeks, this will be available in the May update. Okay, and that includes even the billing worksheets. Even though I'm not doing the webinar right away, all of it will be available, including revenue forecasts for campaigns, these changes within the campaign, and billing worksheets, mass billing. So if you bill by, let's say, can you show us how the invoicing looks when done through campaign? The invoicing is the same as the invoicing normally is. That's not going to be any different. So if you're, creating an invoice in the campaign, if you're just doing one amount, it's going to, create your invoice with a single line amount. it will have a separate line for all of the actual expenses, and then you could actually detail them out on your invoice layout if you wanted to display those. Otherwise, it shows as a single line with transactions. If you're doing by service and item, then it's actually going to produce the invoice by billing item and item. That is no different. So the way the invoices are generated now, the only difference is if you have any extras, that will show up as a single line on the invoice with transactions. So your layout, if you prefer to have that detail displayed, can be displayed. So if you bill by campaign but use fixed fee and don't use campaign budgets, does anything change? No. So the original way that this is set up is it's not going to change as far as anything existing. So if you come into your campaign, it's going to either say currently campaign by bill by campaign or bill by project. That's going to remain the same. The functionality of that field remains the same. What we have done is we've given the option now to be able to come in and actually bill the campaign budget and include expenses, actual expenses from your projects on that invoice, and be able to do these through mass billing and billing worksheets, and then also be able to include a billing schedule. The webinar will definitely be available. There will be a recording of it. And again, in May, I'm going to be doing the webinar for billing worksheets. I'll go through this portion again, what has changed, because there are some who are not coming to this webinar because it's mainly about mass billing. The ones who come to the May will hear again about the changes inside the campaign, as well as how billing worksheets are now affected. It was too much to definitely put into one webinar, so I wanted to split them out. Okay. All right, let's see, one last question and then we'll move on. Does the estimate budget have to be on the campaign, or can each project have an estimate budget that totals and gets included in the campaign? So again, that's kind of that question of how do you create your estimates? If you create your estimates, you can still create your estimates, you know, by service only or by project. So if you create your campaign estimate by project, you can still do that each. It's going to take all of your approved estimates from your projects to create your campaign budget. And if you then want to bill the campaign budget, that allows you that ability to say, I want to bill a % of each project. Okay. And so therefore you can still bill a percentage of those projects and then add in those extras. All right, so let's go take a look at mass billing. So if we come over to the Today Billing page, we now have a new category called Fixed Fee Campaigns. If you click on your More button, and if you have the option for System Settings, it's going to be an option down here. By default, we've just determined to have it on by default. Now, if you decide that, you know, we never bill campaign budgets, or we don't want to do our campaigns in mass billing, you can uncheck this and it will not display. Lots of times I say it's nice to have all of these displaying, because even if you're doing only time and material projects and nothing else, if something shows up in one of these other categories, it makes you stop and think, why do I have this fixed fee campaign showing up? It could possibly be that it's set up incorrectly. So you want to make sure that you don't miss anything. So sometimes I always say, you know, you can unselect these items, but it's also nice to know if something shows up in a category it shouldn't, it's an opportunity to catch it early enough and realize that you didn't miss billing the campaign or the projects. Of course, when you first come to your update, there's going to be nothing showing in the fixed fee for campaigns, because of course, in order to have that show up, you must go into your campaign and check that box that says I'm going to be using the campaign budget. Otherwise, there is, it's not going to show up in here at all. Fixed fee here is project level. So just like in project level, we have the, the budget amount, the to bill amounts, the percentages, is it being created as an advance? What are those extras? Am I billing any extras? Are extras included or not? We've got that same option now in fixed fee campaigns. Now, one of the things I want to note is there is a filter here. So as you have these filters to say, am I looking for a specific parent client or project manager? What am I looking for in those extra expenses? Those are the same options that you had in the fixed fee project. But we have an option in here that if you're dealing with campaign segments or not. Right now it defaults to saying that you're going to display all your campaigns regardless of whether they have a segment or not. The purpose of that is that when you go to bill your campaign, you have an option to bill by percentage of segment. The percentage of segment, if you're not using any segments, isn't going to work out very well for you that way. So you have the option to say, well, I only want to look at campaigns that have the segment so that I can select them all, generate the invoice, generate those by percentage of segment, then come back over, select the ones that do not have segments because those I'm going to be billing more either as a single amount or by service and item. This little filter caught me the other day. I couldn't figure out why my webinar or my campaigns were not showing up. And I didn't have this set to both, and not all of my campaigns had segments. If you notice in each of the segments, of course, you've got your campaign. You've got any billing comments coming from that billing schedule. So if I go to my campaign and I go to that billing schedule, those are those comments. They do show up. So each time that you have that next billing schedule show up, that billing comment can be there. Of course, it's showing you the total amount of the budget. So since expenses are not included, it's actually showing just the labor portion of the budget. So once again, my total budget is $107,000, but my labor portion is only $100,000. That's what's actually showing up here in my budget amount. It's bringing in my percent from my billing schedule. If I have no schedule at all, it will come in as 100% and allow you to select and change what's there. So once again, just like in a fixed fee project, you can override what's in the billing schedule, or if you have no billing schedule, you can set the percentage or the dollar amount of what you want to bill. The system recognizes whether it's an advance bill or not. It also knows whether there's any extra expenses to bill because of the fact that expenses are not included. So therefore, this is the expenses that would be billed. The total that you're going to be billing, including those extras, is $25,104. Okay. You have the option to edit the details, just like you do on a fixed fee. Now, when you click into edit the details, now you are back at campaign level billing. It is just as if you had gone to the campaign and decided to bill from here. If you just wanted to review the transactions that are going to be billed, the extras, so you can make sure that, yes, based on our through date, these are the things that we should be billing, then you can close the panel, still go ahead and click on generate and generate. If you actually decide to edit the details and you bill from here, then once again, just like inside the campaign, it's not looking at the billing schedule. It's just saying, well, now that you're at the campaign billing page, what do you want to do? Do you want to bill something different? And how do you want to bill that? Okay. When you go to generate the invoice, when you generate, there is an option here that says one invoice per campaign. That cannot be changed. If you have 3 different campaigns for the same client, you will end up with 3 separate invoices. they will not be able to be combined like you can projects and say, well, I'd still, I've got 3 projects, I'd like to put them on one invoice. Campaigns, they're all still going to be separate campaigns, separate invoices. You, of course, still have the option to create the invoice as approved. Here's your mark all your transactions as billed. So once again, if you unselect that here, it remembers it. It will keep it unselected until you decide to select it again. But otherwise, it will look at this through date and go through and mark all of the remaining transactions as marked as billed. Okay, this of course only affects revenue invoices, just like it does in fixed fee. If it's an advance bill invoice, it does no marking as billed on those transactions. Okay. If you have something where you are creating an advance bill, so this campaign, so if I look at my 3rd campaign in here, come down to here, and I go to my campaign and I look at the billing schedule, that first billing schedule is actually creating an advance bill. Once again, I'm just billing the labor portion, so it's going to only advance bill the labor portion because extras are not included. So those will come in as actual costs. It's going to create an advance bill off of just the labor budget. When I go to mass billing, even though I have some extra expenses that are falling within this date range, when I go to generate the invoice, it will first generate just the advance bill. Then you can come back, because then it says, okay, now the second part of it is if you wanted, the next time around you go to bill, then those extras will be included. So if it's an advance bill that is to be created this time around, it is not going to include those extras on it. Of course, it's going to keep those separate. The advance bill is solely just advance bills, no actual transactions. So it will just create an advance bill invoice and then leave the extra expenses to be available to bill next time around. Okay. Let's see. What if you are this stage in billing, but you want to move the hard costs to a different project or a campaign? Is it possible to do that at this stage? Not currently from within the campaign. You would actually have to go to the projects and move transactions around if you need to. Now that could be something that we could look into as far as an enhancement. Right now, there's not the option to do that, because basically when you drill down, you're looking at the campaign. You would almost need to go to the projects themselves. Don't know how difficult that would be to bring in as an enhancement, but just, again, to note, this is all new features for mass billing and billing worksheets. So we tried to bring in as much as we could on this first pass, and then kind of see what feedback we get from the clients to see what other things we might be able to do from here. Can you bill fixed fee and use the labor budget? I'm not sure if I understand that question. So maybe you can, if you have a chance, go ahead and clarify that. Can you bill fixed fee and use the labor budget? Basically, the system is going to be looking at either the total budget. If expenses are not included, if you're not billing actual expenses, then it uses the entire budget. Otherwise, if expenses are included and you're going to be billing those actual expenses, then the system just uses the labor budget. Okay. Let's see. And in the interface you were just in, you hit and you can access the campaign budget. So if you're clicking, if you're on mass billing fixed fee, just like if you're in mass billing for projects, you can edit the details, and that actually brings you to the campaign budget. To the campaign billing screen. And then of course, depending on how you want to look at that, here's how your budget broke out. Okay. If you set it up by percent of project, this is how your budget broke out by project. So you have, you can see what you budgeted for within there. Otherwise it shows up as just a single amount, and then the total budget is up here of your total budget. Okay. All right. So let me go ahead and close that. So just be aware of the campaign segments. Be aware that, you know, you've got your typical filters, but that when you go to generate, you can mark your transactions as billed. Okay, now your options here for one line, segment, and service and item bills the same way it does if you were in the campaign. So if you're in the campaign and you hit the bill and you say, I'm going to bill by, you know, by project or by, you know, segment, it's going to do segment, billing item, and item. If it does service, it does billing item and item. That's the same thing it will do here. It will do billing item and item, and then it will do segment, billing item and item, and then this will do just a single amount. I was talking about the next to the yes, no, or both tabs. Oh, okay. So yeah, this filter here is the same filter as far as what do you want included for those extra expenses, or do you want to filter out for specific campaigns only? Of course, if you want to filter for specific clients and companies. Okay. All right. This is basically it. These are the changes to mass billing for campaigns. What's changing in the campaign itself, what's changing in mass billing. Next webinar, we'll really be going through the details of kind of what changes with billing worksheets. You're going to see a new category out there, and it's going to function the same way off of that campaign, use campaign budget option. If you have the opportunity, when the May update hits, you're going to be able to review also your revenue forecast. You'll be able to see your campaign show up there. If their campaign is not showing up, then the things to look for is that you have to have it set to use the campaign budget. That's how the revenue forecast knows that you're using this budget. And then it is looking at expenses are not included or yes or no. That's the same thing it does right now with fixed fee. But then you must have a billing schedule because it needs to know how to forecast that budget amount. All right. Any other last questions that I can possibly answer? Perfect. Well, once you guys get the update and you have a chance to kind of see what it does, and if you do have any questions, please don't hesitate to, you know, send in feedback. Let's see, I have one more question. If you use the campaign estimate and create billing schedule and you set up each invoice as an advance bill, how do you create the revenue invoice to apply to the advance? Is it from the campaign, or can you do it as the project and the campaign is complete? How do you create the revenue invoice to apply to the advance? So if you're actually, so I guess the question would be again, are you billing the campaign budget not only for the advance, but also for your revenue invoices? So this first one would be creating my advance bill for the full amount. Of course, I could do it over a scheduled time. And then here's where I'm creating the revenue invoice. And I would then apply that revenue invoice that gets generated to the advance bill. Okay. Alrighty, looking forward to hearing back on feedback, not just obviously on the webinar, but once the update comes out, should be about the middle of May that when you see those changes, and any feedback would be appreciated. We will be posting this webinar on the help guide. So if anybody missed it or wants to listen to it again, the recording should be there within the next day or two. Again, appreciate your attendance on this, and thank you.